Hello, and welcome to Matt and Mike Pull Focus. I'm Mike,
And I'm not.
and today we're going to be talking about Bernard Rose's Candyman.
So, I'll start by saying I absolutely love this film, and it was introduced to me at too young an age, which
Yeah.
all the best horror films, or the ones you remember usually are.
Sure.
You hadn't seen this
No,
movie.
this is first viewing for me. I'd heard the legend of the Candyman, but I'd never seen it. I thought it was just standard, run of the mill, supernatural horror. You say this guy's name 5 times, he appears, he kills you.
Yeah.
Oh no, lots of killings, lots of stabbings. Who is it? It's the mystery ghost. Didn't think it was going to be as in depth and topical and has loads of race issues in it. And
Which
yeah,
I think is particularly kind of relevant right now with the sort of whole Jordan Peele's movies like Get Out and Us.
Yeah, it's really coming
out.
back into a topic of horror films at the moment, and yeah, I can definitely see where the origins, or like little seed, not the origins, because we've got like the Night of the Living Dead having very massive topical issue of a black man being thought to be a zombie at the spoilers at the end of the film.
And getting shot, and at the height of the sort of civil rights movement, basically, or like the sort of tail end of it. But there's a great story about that I heard George Romero tell us, where they had a finished cut of Night of the Living Dead in the trunk of their car, and they were driving it, to sell it in Hollywood or wherever.
Yeah.
And as they were driving with this finished movie, Martin Luther King was shot.
Oh.
And they heard it on the radio, and
Wow.
and all of a sudden, this movie they had in the trunk had just so much more weight to it.
Yeah.
Because they hadn't been shown yet,
I can
publicly,
imagine,
and they were
yeah.
like, "Oh Jesus!"
Wow.
And but it was completely unintentional. Like, I think it's Dwayne Johnson.
The Rock.
No. Oh God, I must apologise. It's Dwayne something. I forget his second name. Who played?
The actor.
The actor who played
Okay.
the character. Oh my God, I'm showing out. Yeah, who played the character in Night of the Living Dead was just cast because he was the best actor amongst their friends. Nothing as the script did not call for him to be a black man, but that's how it worked out, and the movie was so much more powerful because of it.
Yeah.
And actually said something.
Right. Okay.
And it's like the whole Alien thing, with Sigourney Weaver, like wasn't written as female.
Sure.
Ripley was just,
Yeah.
that was just a sort of generic. It could have been it was an androgynous character, could have been either way.
Of course. Yeah.
But so Candyman.
Yeah. Back to Candyman.
So what I couldn't talk about this movie like verbatim, but I mean, what did you like about it? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, I really did. I was surprised at how much I did, again, because I had the preliminary idea of it just being a supernatural thriller about a ghost that killed you through a mirror after you said his name 5 times, and like the Bloody Mary, lots of different iterations.
Yeah, you have that from
primary.
It's like a primary school thing. You have those Bloody Mary rhymes in the playground, so you kind of it felt almost like a childish concept in a way. You have this, you say his name and he appears.
Especially because we are of an age where we grew up around about the time that Candyman was first being released. So
yeah, exactly.
I imagine the idea of a supernatural entity that you can summon after saying their name, God knows how many times.
Yeah.
But like that was in the public consciousness a lot more when we were growing up.
It probably was, actually. I never thought of that, but yeah, it was like, around that time that we were in primary school, and it was, because I remember those Bloody Mary rhymes and stuff from that. So I think when the movie came around, it felt familiar in that respect. But a little bit of history behind the story of it, because it was written by Clive Barker in the mid '80s. It was part of one of his books of blood, his short story collection. It was called The Forbidden, and it was set in Clive Barker's hometown in Liverpool. Mm-hmm. And it was set, instead of Cabrini Green, which is the sort of the projects in Chicago, which the movie is based in. It was based on like a council estate in Liverpool.
Right.
So it was very British, and it was it wasn't about race, it was about class.
Yeah.
It was all about and the sort of middle class going to the working class area and being afraid of what would happen to her. Same character, this Helen character and everything. But Candyman isn't described as like African or black in any ways. Kind of a multicolored, diamond, shiny kind of man-shaped thing, but it has no particular race.
Right. Okay.
It's just these kind of all colours basically.
Yeah.
And so when Bernard Rose got read the short story and wanted to develop it into a movie. He sort of transposed the story from Liverpool to Chicago.
Right, yeah.
And when researching, he went to Chicago and he found this real housing project, which is actually called Cabrini Green, where the movie was set. It was actually a real place. It's been demolished now,
Right, okay.
Probably in no small part due to the movie's depiction of it, which was real.
Sure.
It's how dangerous and kind of run down this place is, and basically about the fear of the white middle class going into this housing project and what awaits you there.
Right.
And he said in the making of, it was just a bunch of families who were very welcoming and very friendly, and that's the reality of it. But but the structure was really terrible. It was awful, inside, and he said they'd kind of the walls were just made of plasterboard, so they'd all been knocked through,
right, yeah.
and there was these floors of, it was almost like a huge cathedral of open, because the floors would just be knocked through.
Yeah.
So you'd have these massive cathedral structures inside
the
building, because they just knocked the plaster and the breeze block through.
Sure.
So he said it was a really crazy place to set the movie, and that's where they filmed it.
Wow.
So yeah, the plot, basically the movie starts and you have this flashback or an urban legend, and it's of, the babysitter, in the house and, has a boyfriend over, and then, he says to the girl, let's go upstairs and we'll,
the urban legend.
This is the urban legend, we'll play Candyman, and they say Candyman 5 times into the mirror, and Candyman appears and kills them.
Yeah.
Both, and then it cuts to Helen is actually interviewing a student about this. She's a sort of a nondescript kind of academic of some kind.
She's a graduate student, isn't she? She's trying to do a postgraduate thesis on urban legends.
Yeah, so she's kind of interviewing students from Chicago University about this, just all sorts of urban legends and things that they've heard in the grapevine.
Mm-hmm.
And so this particular student tells them about the Candyman, and this one and then that, no pun intended, kind of sinks its hook into her, and she thinks this is a really interesting story.
Yeah.
And
but
then
isn't that based on real events? Because I'm pretty sure in doing some research for this, I think Clive Barker did. Actually, it might not have been Clive.
Probably Bernard, actually, the director.
Yeah, if it was Bernard Rose. Sorry, I'm getting my facts all mixed up. But I think Bernard Rose, or the screenwriter for the film, used real incidents of a killer coming through the shared mirror space in people's bathrooms.
Yeah.
Taking out the mirror in one bathroom, pushing through the other one, and creating a hole in between. In between flats.
Because that was even thinner than the breeze block itself. Was these divisions between the sort of medicine cabinets in the bathroom, and you're absolutely right. I'd heard that as well. So that's what's kind of scary about this, is that it's a film about urban legend, which is actually a lot more factual than you would like to think.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Even the actual murders, the mystery, these unsolved murders in Cabrini Green, where the killer had come through the bathroom cabinet, is actually real, and they just literally used that in the movie but instead of it being, a natural, a human murderer, it was blamed on this
that's
mythical figure.
That's what Helen tries to do, isn't it? She's trying to figure out why urban legends are created and who actually began this, and if there is someone trying to take the mantle of the Candyman to perpetrate a series of crimes and a series of murders, but using the folklore of this Cabrini Green community to help get away with it. And
yes, I guess it's kind of like, when you get to a certain number of unsolved murders, you can no longer, and the frustration of not being able to actually charge anybody with it, you must just start to create these kind of mythical. I mean, that's monsters back to the beginning of time, isn't it? Back to the darkened forests and
Jack
stuff.
the Ripper,
Jack the Ripper
as well.
Yeah, if you can't explain what's happening, then it starts to become this supernatural thing.
Urbanized
legend, and this just happens to be in an urban setting.
Yeah.
So she goes in there and she starts researching all about it, and then she gets her friend Bernadette on board, and they actually go to Cabrini Green, and and they go in there and they feel very, very threatened, and it's a very dangerous place to go. But Helen's really persistent to go there, and they start to talk to this resident who lives there, and she confirms that this was not a man who was committing these crimes. This is the Candyman, and they sort of go away chuckling about it and say this, that's just so delusional. But they're very interested in it. Mm-hmm. And then they start to talk to her. Helen's husband Trevor is an actual lecturer at the university, and they have this great dinner scene where they sit down with a couple of friends, and one of Trevor's colleagues explains the the legend
Yeah.
to the two of them.
The legend first appeared in 1890. Candyman was the son of a slave. His father had amassed a considerable fortune from designing a device for the mass producing of shoes after the Civil War. Candyman had been sent to all the best schools and had grown up in polite society. He had a prodigious talent as an artist and was much sought after when it came to the documenting of one's wealth and position in society in a portrait. Well, it was in this latter capacity that he was commissioned by a wealthy landowner to capture his daughter's virginal beauty. Well, of course, they fell deeply in love, and she became pregnant. Poor Candyman. Father executed a terrible revenge. He paid a pack of brutal hooligans to do the deed. They chased Candyman through the town to Cabrini Green, where they proceeded to saw off his right hand with a rusty blade. And no one came to his aid. But this was just the beginning of his ordeal. Nearby, there was an apiary. Dozens of hives filled with hungry bees. They smashed the hives and stole the honeycomb and smeared it over his prone, naked body. Candyman was stung to death by the bees. They burned his body on a giant pyre and then scattered his ashes over Cabrini Green.
Well, there you have it.
Yeah. That's
such a great scene.
Yeah, it's fantastic in terms of setting everything up that you need to know about him.
Yeah.
But I love as well just the little details that aren't necessary. Like nothing about his father's shoemaking or like creating a device to help people sell shoes after the Civil War ever comes up. But it's just there because it's more backstory to the character.
It makes him more human as well. Like,
you have more of a 3-dimensional idea about the origins of this monster.
Yeah.
And
my brother summed it up nicely and just said this film is just much better than it needs to be.
Yeah,
I think that's one
it does.
Of the
it goes to the extra mile. You can tell.
For like a slasher movie, you know.
Well, exactly. That's what I didn't expect. I didn't expect a scene like that. I mean, every horror film usually does have a scene like that where a crusty old white guy kind of explains the origins of, this is Bagul from Sinister or
Basil Exposition.
The Babadook or something like that, trying to explain where this thing comes from or how you can defeat it or something. But in terms of that, it doesn't really provide her anything apart from a backstory and why he has the hook for a hand, why bees are a part of, they signal his arrival, or he has, them coming out of his mouth in some scenes. Yeah. And the funeral pyre, it has foreshadowing of terms of where the story's going. Also,
I'd never thought of this until now, but that character, that academic doesn't say, or doesn't get to say, this is bullshit. Doesn't get to say, of course it's not true. Yeah. The way he acts it and the way he reads that script is that this is absolutely true.
It's completely believable.
Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Like,
it's not debunking anything. It's not it's not him saying, "Oh, don't worry, it's only just a legend."
Yeah, it's like Candyman country. Like, he knows about it. Like,
exactly. This guy has reason to be pissed.
Yeah.
And he is pissed.
Yeah.
And his retribution is justified.
Yeah, totally.
It seems like a lot of the trouble seems to be coming towards the white people in this film, there seems to be a big racial divide between the perpetrators and the victims. Yeah. So quote unquote. So I feel like this is him saying like he is an avenger for the black people, for the black community.
Yeah.
The bad stuff that white people have done to black people is being given back to them tenfold by Candyman.
This is a sort of a slavery guilt, slavery revenge movie.
Yeah.
In the same way that Django Unchained or any of that movies kind of is in a way, but this is just a lot more metaphorical and kind of supernatural in that way.
In the way that Django is a bit too over the top, and the violence given back to them is kind of like what he did with the Inglourious Basterds and just shooting Hitler's face off.
Yeah.
Whereas but this is serious. This is like bad shit was done to this guy, and bad shit he will therefore wreak upon his victims. And it's like, I can kind of see why. I can kind of see what, like, given a good reason for why he's doing his actions, and makes him more believable, makes him more three-dimensional, makes him more understandable, and that's scarier.
It really is. And there was, in terms of context for when this movie was released, it was released in the summer of '92.
Yeah.
When the LA riots were going on.
Rodney King.
Yeah. And that was, and the director also from this said, like, oh my God, like, we're releasing a movie where, like, this white woman is basically consumed by this evil black spectre, God, we're gonna get crucified for this movie. People won't understand what it's about. Oh my God, this is bad, really bad timing.
But not skipping too far forward into the plot or into the finale. But I feel like a lot of good is done in terms of people coming onto the same side about things. If you know what I mean. I'm trying to be diplomatic. I'm trying to not spoil stuff, but just white and black come together at the end, I feel.
Well, what's interesting is, like, her friend Bernadette is African American, and all that stuff. So it's kind of like, some terrible stuff happens to her. So,
true.
At
the hands of a white person. Seemingly,
exactly. So it's.
But that's another aspect that I didn't expect. Like, a lot of it, I thought it was just going to be lots of deaths, lots of who did it. Oh, it was Candyman. Brilliant. End.
Yeah.
But in this, it's like our white heroine is convinced that she is going insane.
Yeah.
And she is perpetrating these acts upon, like, her best friend, like other people, like a dog with its head being cut off.
That scene. And that brings me to, I have to tell you this, like, before we continue with the plot exposition.
Yeah.
I have to tell you this story because, as I said, it was such a formative horror movie for me.
Yeah, go on.
I think, so go back to, like, probably, I'm going to say about 1996, 97. So I'd be about
8 or 9?
Yeah, about 8 or 9.
Yeah.
And it was probably more like 97 because I remember I was sat with my brother and we were playing Super Mario on the N64, so Mario 64.
Yeah.
And playing that and quite happily just sitting there. And my parents bust into the room and say the best possible thing they could have said, which was, boys, there's a movie on Channel 4 tonight, 9 o'clock, called Candyman. Whatever you do, don't watch it.
Right.
Good night.
It's like, don't think of a red panda. And it's like, you think of a red panda. Yeah, you're going to do it.
And and then I think we watched the first 5 minutes and freaked out so much and then turned it off again. And then obviously, carried on playing, like, F-Zero or something.
Sure.
And then it was like, an hour later and we turned it back on again. We just flicked back onto Channel 4.
Oh, God.
And I just saw this dog's head in a pool of blood and this screaming woman. And the scene is a woman leaning over a cot that's covered in blood, and the baby's, mutilated or missing. We don't know.
Sure.
And she's shaking the cot, and I just turned it off again and went, ugh.
Mario, save me.
Exactly, yeah. So it was just great because it just added that, like, forbidden level. This is not a movie that should be watched by anybody.
No.
And then flicking on at those particular moments that were just so dark and
God,
horrible.
I can't.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I imagine if I had watched it when I was that young, I would have just seen it as, deaths, scariness, not like the race relations that are in, like, the subtext of it all. I would have gone completely over my head, and it would just been like, oh my God, scary man with a hook for a hand.
No, I'm only starting to really understand movies now. Like, I'm 30. To be fair, like, but after that incident, I just remember sort of shelving it in my brain, thinking I need to watch this whole movie at some point because it just looks so amazingly dark and cool. And a lot of movies came after that. A lot of horror movies, I would have eased my way into the horror genre, but that certainly was like a priority. As soon as I get my hands on this movie, the VHS as it was or whatever, I need to watch the whole thing.
Just hearing that clip again, where it set up his backstory, his origin, his weapon, the other things that are associated with him. Did you ever see The Bye Bye Man?
No, I avoided it because I heard it wasn't that great.
My God, it is possibly the worst horror film I've ever seen.
Really?
Only because they try and do something similar with creating a monster, creating the titular Bye-Bye Man in terms of an urban legend, and what you can and can't do. But they don't follow their own rules. They don't set it up properly. Apparently, according to the film, coins signal his arrival, the dropping of coins. There is a train that you hear when you think he's coming.
Right.
Then you see his dog, which is called a hound, which is made up of the meat or the skin of his previous victims.
Okay.
He doesn't really do anything apart from the fact that he touches you and makes you see stuff that doesn't exist.
So he doesn't actually harm you physically?
Not in the film. He just touches someone on the face and goes, "Ah!" That's all he does. And
I really want to watch this now.
right, I know.
You're selling it really well.
I'm selling it, but in terms of the fact that it's such a bad film, it thinks it's fantastic.
Yeah.
But nothing really pays off. There is nothing. There's never. Sorry,
I'm
ranting.
It's not so bad it's good, where it's like because it's played quite seriously.
It's so bad it's bad.
It's so bad it's bad. It's self-important. And
Yeah,
it thinks it's
it
great.
is. It thinks it's great. It casts actors who aren't good at all.
Yeah.
And
it's on Netflix, I think. So
it is on Netflix.
I will watch it now. Yeah.
If only just watch it and try and tell me what they think the rules are about Bye-Bye Man, because horror films need rules. They need set things for the people, your heroes, to abide by or to flaunt and to try and
you can change the parameters. Say if you have a werewolf movie, you can change the parameters of how the werewolf works as long as you stick to them within your movie.
Yeah,
that's the way I see it. So it's not like, oh, zombies don't do that. It's like, no, zombies do that in this movie,
this film,
which is fine.
Well,
like,
exactly,
you know.
So you have a scary man who can teleport and do stuff.
Yeah.
Like Candyman, like Bye-Bye Man,
Yeah.
like Michael Myers, like Freddy, Jason, all the rest of them.
Yeah.
But that is done so poorly, and by the end of it, I'm just like, if a train is heard, I'm like, oh, does that mean that he is, or he's not arriving, or you've got 3 more steps after you hear the train? It's
So
just
it breaks
done
its own
so
rules,
badly.
and you hear a train and nothing happens. Or
Exactly.
Something like that,
So
and you're like, what?
in the finale, when he appears, I'm nonplussed. I'm just, oh, there he is. Cool. What do you do again? And you're not supposed to think his name. You're not supposed to say his name, because if you say his name to someone else, you therefore have to kill the other person so that they don't spread it, like The Ring, but not really like The Ring, because when it's in your head, he will just then appear to you and make you kill whoever you've told about it.
I'm afraid
it's so stupid.
You've actually done the movie a service, I'm afraid, because it just sounds
It's so bad. It's brilliant to get drunk get drunk with and laugh at it.
Yeah.
But otherwise, my God, it's one of the worst things ever. But just compare that to just how that scene was handled.
Yeah.
And just the gravitas that he gave it, and the rules about him, and like where he came from, what he does, why he has the things.
That shot is so great of her, like with listening with the cigarette. She's like, her eyes are glazed, and she's got that kind of like thin strip of light across her eyes. That kind of old school Hollywood
like film noir or something.
And he like the sort of a bit like the way in the Addams Family, the way Morticia Addams always has that kind of
she always has that lighting on her eyes.
It's leftover from the 30s.
It's like letterboxing.
Letterbox of light. Yeah, it's just so cool.
Yeah, completely. But just compare that to how the Bye-Bye Man's done, and that's again what I was expecting. I was expecting the Bye-Bye Man levels of awful. Just I don't know how.
So when I was ranting about it, you in the back of your mind, you're thinking this is going to be bollocks.
Probably no, not bollocks. Because obviously I trust your opinion, but
no, but I also wouldn't, dismiss it. I completely sympathise with what I would feel the same.
Sure.
And as I said before, it is a movie that's just so much better than it needs to be.
It is completely. It blew me away.
Yeah.
In terms of just, oh my God, this is so much more to it, and I actually am invested in her plight and how Candyman seems to be making her go insane, and this is a really interesting way of doing it, because he's convincing her to do the killings, and he's not killing anyone himself.
And he keeps going back to her. She keeps going back to him. Candyman, it kind of is deserving of her affections in a way that her husband isn't.
Yeah, they've got a bit of a Clarice Hannibal Lecter kind of relationship between them, haven't they? And it's very alluring, and she's very drawn to him, and he doesn't really. Yeah, he doesn't do much apart from just say, we belong together.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a romance between the two of them, but...
Just telling her how special she is and stuff, while he does terrible things to her mates.
Yeah, it's a weird kind of negging relationship that they got going on, haven't they? Yeah.
But it's a tension, nonetheless.
Yeah, that's true.
So basically, yeah, she comes away from this academic with this kind of idea that she wants to pursue the the Candyman legend and look into it more. So she obviously, like the curiosity and the cat, she goes back to Cabrini Green and goes in and meets this child called Jake, who basically says, the Candyman, of course, the Candyman is I can't talk about it, he says, but I can show you where he is. So he leads her down to these kind of public toilets and says, in there, and she goes in. And then she basically gets accosted by this bloke who looks like the description of the Candyman. He fits the description perfectly. Yeah. So then we're kind of treated to this wonderful false, conclusion almost, where she is assaulted, but then the man is arrested and identified by her. Yeah. So Helen comes away with the black eye and God knows what. And then we're about 45 minutes into the movie here, and when we think, and she's kind of satisfied, that's the guys behind bars, and don't worry, Jake, no one can hurt your your projects. And
she hasn't said the name in the mirror or anything like that, has she? So
she's like total white savior, like everything's cool, don't worry. And then she, is in the parking lot, and then you just hear Helen. And there's the most amazing Tony Todd voice.
It's got
we're introduced to the Candyman.
A lot of bass to that Tony Todd voice, isn't there?
Yeah. That great intro where he's like, I'll split you from your groin to your gullet. And it's like,
but and again, he's handled in broad daylight.
Yeah.
He's seen without, having to do any jump scares. He's at the other end of a parking lot, so you can't really see if it's him or not.
He's just standing with his hands behind his back.
Yeah, and it's like...
and he's so elegant. He's got like that long coat and everything.
Yeah, he's well dressed. Yeah. He doesn't seem to be a cliche horror movie villain.
No.
He just seems to be a guy in a parking lot. And just right then, the rules are kind of subverted.
Yeah.
The horror movie thing is that, you're safe in daylight and it's scary at night, but with him appearing right then and there, I suppose in a way that Halloween did it, with Michael Myers just like stalking Jamie Lee Curtis from behind hedges and stuff like that.
It's quite similar. I never thought it was quite similar to that in a way, and also the the way like the American Werewolf chain, the transformation scene is done in broad daylight with Sam Cooke's Blue Moon on the radio, and it's just like the most conventional setting, but this terrible thing is happening in a real world setting with no smoke and mirrors, with no candlelight. It's just parking lot, daytime, safest place you could probably be.
So when they subvert horror cliches, shit's gonna go down. That
as soon as you hear that voice, this is the real deal now. This is the actual Candyman, and he says to Helen, you doubted me, so I had to come. I had to come and see.
Her investigation is kind of. Is it losing the potency of the Candyman myth and legend?
Yeah, his job is to keep his myth and legend alive, and because this guy's now behind bars, this human, he comes back and says, no, this isn't going to fly. Like, I'm real, and I have to. You doubted me, you doubted I existed, so I was obliged to come.
Yeah. This guy has taken my legend away from me, so I'm having to do some fucked up shit.
Yeah. And then we're transported to the scene that I kind of dropped in on, the thing where Helen wakes up covered in blood, drenched, head to toe in blood, with a butcher's knife, and she's back in the apartment at Cabrini Green where she first met that resident, and her baby is missing, and her dog has its head cut off brutally, was lying on the floor.
Yeah, horrible stuff.
It's really grim. Like, there's just the screaming, like over the top.
It's like Texas Chainsaw levels of screaming, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like the whole end of Texas Chainsaw, and then and then she's attacked and arrested, and they basically think Helen is guilty of this possible murder, disappearance of the baby.
Of the baby, yeah.
So she's taken into custody, and and then she is released sort of posthumously, and she then she's surrounded by a lawyer and Trevor, who kind of don't really think she did it, but she was literally caught red-handed, literally. Yeah. So they're not 100% convinced.
Trevor seemingly is starting to wane in his love for Helen, isn't it?
Yeah. And he's spending a lot of late nights out with the
student
with God knows who.
What is she called? Stacey or something like that, or some kind of
blonde Stacey.
Yeah, blonde bimbo name or whatever.
With her hiked up blue jeans.
Sorry, all the Stacys out there, but
yeah. So yeah, Trevor's a douche, basically.
Sander Berkeley always plays a douche.
He's always a douche.
He is always
He's in
a douche.
Terminator 2, isn't he? He's
Terminator
John Connor's...
2 gets stabbed through the face, or the milk carton,
Yeah.
I first knew him as George Mason from 24. He was Jack Bauer's boss in the first two seasons. And he was absolutely... He's such a... what's the word? Like a pencil pusher, or like a busybody, or
I think it's the kind of the partial baldness thing, and just that he's just an A-grade douche.
Yeah, he always does like upper management well. He always does like dickhead. But Air Force One as well. He's in Air Force One. Yeah, he's one of the bad guys in Air Force One. But yeah, he does. He's
tarred in terms. He's not my mother tarred.
Oh God, yeah, exactly, yeah.
So the she's support is waning slightly in Helen's camp, and then she is. Let me think. What happens next?
Who does she kill next? Does she kill Bernadette?
So then, so Helen's at home, and then Bernadette comes over to visit and and then Candyman also shows up at the same time and brutally slaughters Bernadette.
Poor Bernadette. She deserves so much more.
Yeah,
bless her.
Bernadette's great, and then Helen is left again, doubly red-handed.
Yep.
And sent to a psych ward.
Insane asylum. Or whatever it is.
She then escapes with the help of the Candyman, which is awesome. Yeah,
I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
Because again, you see, this is where some of the confusion for me started. Where she's tied to a bed, and she sees Candyman like floating above her.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Well, Helen, you've got yourself into a pickle here, haven't you? You need me."
And he sort of goes clink and gets the straps off her arm.
And that's in the interview. I'm talking when she's like tied to the bed in like the first room that she goes into, but then you see on the camera monitors, the fact is that she's just talking to herself, and Candyman isn't there. So right then I was like, oh, okay, so he's corporeal. He's only being seen by the person who summons him, or only whoever he wants to see him.
He's Candyman. He can do anything.
Right. Okay, but that comes into a bit of contention right at the end, which we will get to. But yeah, at that point I was like, oh, okay, so this is the rules of Candyman. He cannot be seen by those he doesn't want to. Okay, cool.
Okay, so that's
sorry.
Establish that rule.
We'll come back to that later. But sorry, carry on.
So then she's then in a scene after that, it turns out that she's been in there for like a month.
Yes.
Yeah, because she said she's been on a heavy dose of Thorazine, whatever that is.
Yes.
And she's been in there for a month, and then Candyman shows up again, slaughters the head psych, and lets her out, basically.
Yeah.
This really cool shot where he sort of bunches up and just flies out the window. Super cool. It's really quick.
That was really weird.
Like that, and he just flies, puts his arms together and just flies backwards out the
that was
window.
a stunt I didn't expect to see.
Yeah, it's really subtle.
Everything's being really subtle. Everything's being really muted and just like, oh my god, murders. And then he just gets pulled out of something that's from like The Exorcist, Exorcist, The Omen, something like an old 70s kind of stunt that would happen with like being brought back by a drawstring. And
I remember thinking that was a bit extreme, and then I thought, oh yeah, he's broken the window so she can get out. I didn't really,
I saw the reason behind it. That was really good.
But that's my friend's favourite shot in the movie, because I think he saw this movie just before me.
Right.
And I remember him explaining that shot, just in a really creepy way, just like, dude, and he's like, Candyman shows up and then he like puts his arms like across his chest and then just flies clean out the window, and I was like, oh my god, so spooky. So that was one of those shots that as a kid was just super freaky.
Yeah. It's definitely memorable and stand out.
Yeah.
Of the film,
Just more Tony Todd the better.
Of course, yeah.
And then she gets out again and she goes back to her apartment to find Trevor with Stacy.
If that is her name.
Yeah. I think it
is. It
Stacy? I think it is Stacy.
Yeah.
I think so.
Something like that.
Painting the apartment in a terrible colour.
And so a month's been enough for him to move on and get with this student girl,
Yeah. And they have grown up kids, like 8 and 10.
That was a quick month.
Yeah.
Trevor's such a dick.
8 and 14? What? Yeah, so that's a South Park reference. And some people get that.
Mm-hmm. You got to get a South Park reference in.
So then Helen is basically left without she's got no best friend, she's got no husband, and she goes out and basically, but the only person she's got left is Candyman.
Yeah.
That's the only person who actually gives a toss about her.
That's the only person who saved her from the insane asylum.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she goes in search of him, goes back to Cabrini Green, and finds him sort of lying on this cool like stone slab, in those like that kind of cathedral type thing I was describing, like a huge hollowed out the inside of the project, and he's there like on this kind of altar,
It's like a sacrificial altar sort of thing, isn't it? Yeah.
She then kind of goes to attack him.
Yeah.
I guess because it's like he's been the cause of all of her woe.
Mm-hmm.
And then he sort of wakes up and she falls into this kind of trance.
Mm.
And she's just like, completely out of it, wakes up, and there's a pyre. She hears the babies, the baby that's been disappeared. There's cries coming from the bonfire outside.
Mm. Again, bringing back the legend of the Candyman.
Yes,
before, so it's like foreshadowing. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and we know that he was burnt on Cabrini Green.
They're doing that in. Are they doing that in like reverence of him or remembrance of him, or is it just like?
It doesn't actually say. I mean, they just talk about the bonfire, like they just talk about it's something that they have. So it must be an annual thing. So yeah, I guess you're left to think that it is a tradition left over. From
I thought it was when
Candyman was
to make
created.
a sacrifice to him, or just to remember the Candyman legend.
Well, they kind of see him as an enemy, which is kind of interesting as well. He's not exactly their hero, being just because he's African American. He's not actually like.
See, I thought he was. I thought he was like a depiction of the oppression, the white person's oppression, and like. He was a martyr for the cause, and just because...
but then he's been responsible for these murders committed against the African American people in the project. Because like when is it Anne Marie? I think the resident who lives there says, "I know who did the murders. Candyman did it." And she looks and she says, "I'm scared, and I'm scared for my child, and all this kind of stuff." So it's kind of that's an interesting thing.
It's a dichotomy then, I think, because like the young black youth who live there, like. Want to impersonate him, and they feel like they have to keep the legend going, and that's why.
Well, I suppose in that way,
able to...
I see like maybe the guy was impersonating him because you have this like white intruder coming in and he's gonna kill her. Well, that's one way to interpret it, but I guess that I always kind of thought they were afraid of him, and the guy's dressing up as him just because it's intimidating, because the whole project's afraid of him.
Yeah, but I see that as again like the black violence is personified by him. And reveres him, but maybe then the other black community is like afraid of him, like you say, and it's a weird one. I'm not too sure, but that's the thing, is it's got levels, it's got depth, which I didn't expect of this slasher film. It's incredible.
Candyman's like, it'd be good to actually sit Candyman down, have a chat with him, say what is your no, just the actual character. What's your motivation? Like, what are you actually?
What are you doing? What are you doing this for?
After?
Yeah. What is your motivation?
But so then she hears the baby crying from inside this funeral pyre. She crawls in. It's like this massive, 2-story tall bonfire, full of like sharp, wood and everything. And she goes in and saves the baby. As she's in there, the project, the people from the project see she's got a hook. She's brandishing this hook she found as a weapon. Yeah. And they see that disappearing into the bonfire, so they think Candyman's in there. So they start throwing gasoline on the fire and lighting it while she's in there. Candyman appears and tries to restrain her and kill her in the flames. She says, we can die together and we'll become legend, Yeah. And she says no, and attacks him and crawls out with the baby. But Helen has suffered too many burns and she dies. Helen suffers 3rd-degree burns and she dies. And then we cut to Helen's funeral, and there's only 2 or 3 people.
Trevor and Stacey.
Yeah, Trevor and Stacey, the academic guy, and another guy who's actually Bernard Rose,
the
director, which is a cool little cameo.
I didn't see that.
With sunglasses on, stood at the thing.
Yeah.
Then the entire project basically turn up and in tribute to her because she saved them from this killer.
Yeah, and saved the baby as well.
And that's the end, or so we think.
Yeah, and then... Well, yeah. Then there's 2 final scenes right at the end as well. Yeah.
So then, so then we go back to the apartment, and Trevor's sat in the bathroom looking all bummed out and depressed, and his new girlfriend Stacey's outside, saying,
wanting to know what they're having for tea.
Yeah, and it was really mundane, and then Trevor's really obviously devastated by Helen's death. Looks in the mirror and says mumbles Helen 5 times, which is a bit contrived, but he does it, and then Helen shows up behind him with a makeshift hook in her hand and guts him. Yeah. The end.
Yeah, Stacey finds it, screams.
Stacey walks in and Trevor's all
and I found was rather interesting that the mural, I think is it over the end credits, there's a picture of the mural that originally did have Candyman on it, which has now been changed to show Helen. Yeah. And she's been deified, or she's been given some sainthood in the projects.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah, no, I like that, and it's like it shows her as like this really angelic kind of figure, like I think with like flames behind her and stuff.
Yeah, again, it's something I never thought I would actually be thinking about or discussing when regarding a horror film.
Yeah,
like this.
exactly.
So,
That's it. There's so much going on in it, and as we were saying before, in the wake of these great new movies like Get Out and Us, and these great Jordan Peele movies,
and now Jordan Peele's going to be directing the sequel or the spiritual successor,
the
to
remake. It's been classed as
I think
a remake.
he's a perfect fit for it. He's definitely on the pulse of race relations in America and how to accurately depict them and satirize them. And if anyone's going to do it, I think Jordan Peele's a fantastic idea.
I agree, and I'll never turn my nose up at a remake of a movie that I love, because I'm still going to watch it and I'm sure I'll enjoy elements of it. But I think that remakes are best made of movies that were problematic or weren't perfect in the first place. Like when the It remake was announced, I was like, that's perfect, because It, the Stephen King miniseries that was cobbled together to make a film, is not a great film, because it's not a film to begin with. It's a jigsaw of two.
Tim Curry's brilliant in it, but apart from that, there are a lot of problems with it.
Yeah, exactly. And Pet Sematary, the remake that's coming out this year, is because I love the original Pet Sematary, but for all the wrong reasons. It's not a great movie, at all by any means. The book is fantastic, but I think it could use a remake. With Candyman, I honestly I don't know if you can say any more. That's the thing. I think it's said it all.
But don't you think that in terms of, I don't know, like remakes, fair enough, they can be trying to improve upon the original, like what they tried to do with The Thing and how it was like originally in 1950s, brought to the 88 with 82.
Say again.
John Carpenter's
The 82.
82.
Yeah.
And they improved upon it because they had better visual effects and everything. And then they tried to do it in 2011 with the prequel.
Yeah.
But the fact is that they didn't. And I agree. Old Boy, again, let's not get into Old Boy's remake, but my God, they didn't improve on it at all. They actually, degraded it. But I feel like there are some instances where, say, Jeff Goldblum in The Fly being a remake of that, or Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Yeah. It changing from like the fear of otherworldly people, than the Donald Sutherland one being the fear of communism, and the original one, was the fear of communism, and then it changed to like the Cold War. But like again, with different remakes, you can make it about different aspects.
Yeah, absolutely,
and different topics. So maybe Candyman, this one, Jordan Peele's one, will be talking just how things have changed in between 1992 and 2020 or whenever it's going to come out.
Because there is a difference in race relations, because you could argue in 1992 race relations was seen in a completely different way than it is now. You know what I mean? Now it's to do with, it's always been to do with bigotry and with this certain party. But now I think the bigotry and the racism is much more open with the Trump supporters and the Muslim ban. Just that just flew. Stuff like, you can imagine that, even 10 years ago, someone saying Muslim ban, and that just going, and then that man is now president of the United States.
Sure.
So that, there's definitely a lot more to be said. In this day and age,
again, it's topical.
Very topical.
Well, I feel like that's why, again, maybe people will be like me and think, oh God, another horror film. But when they find out that like the cultural subtext and the racial subtext of the film is making it perfect for a remake now. I'm hoping, again, if you put someone with the nuance and the technical quality of Jordan Peele in the director's chair, like he's now doing with the Twilight Zone remake, or reboot of the TV series.
Is that a series, or is that going to be?
Yeah, it's a
TV. It's a Netflix series, is it?
I don't know if it's Netflix, but I know it's definitely going to be a new series coming on. I think it's this year. They've been releasing like trailers and posters for it. Yeah. So that's upcoming with Jordan Peele. He's the figurehead at the moment of the horror revival, and especially the black horror revival. So,
and rightly so, because Get Out was really scary, but in that more kind of realistic way of the Trump administration and their sort of policy, and all the sort of alt-right coming out and saying this stuff is really just under the surface of a lot of people's this is not fake, this is really real, this is not something that's gone away. This racism is boiling under the surface, and it's and people like Donald Trump and Katie Hopkins and all these kind of figureheads, it just comes to surface, and once these people are gone and elected out, then we'll know who the bad guys are.
Yeah.
That's the scary thing, you know, is like we're going to be left in this world where it's like, oh my God, like we know who you are now.
Yeah.
All these people who are just bigoted, like horrible, you know, like
Yeah.
ignorant racists.
I mean, with Get Out, I feel like there was more of a subverted racism to it, where it was about the pro, like how much white people are now pro-black everything.
Yeah.
In terms of trying to be so overtly non-racist, they are
Yeah.
instead being racist.
Yeah, just swinging it so far the other way. That
Yeah,
it's like,
by saying like, "Oh my God, I would have voted for Obama a third time if I could," or "Oh my
Yeah.
God, the black people are so good at athletics," or "They're so
Yeah,
good at
yeah.
you know
Positive
all X, Y, Z."
discrimination.
Yeah, it's the positive discrimination. You're still seeing them as a black, but you're not just seeing them as a person, which is the ideal.
Yeah,
You're still
yeah.
seeing them as what is good about their race, and
Yeah,
that is in itself not good.
No.
So I felt that was a fantastic depiction of that, and
Yeah,
just
yeah.
outlining it and just
So in a
highlighting it.
Candyman remake, like how the, you know, that's what's interesting from that director, is like how you know, how is he
I
going to
don't
take it? You
know.
know, what direction is he going to take?
Well, that's the thing.
The
yeah.
origin of the monster that is Candyman, like where's that going to come from? What's going to have?
I can't imagine that the origin of him will change much. I still feel like he's going to be punished for getting a white woman pregnant in the Civil War times.
I mean, maybe they'll change it from, you know, what would be really interesting. I don't think they would do this if they would set that he was killed in 1992. You know, around the sort of,
Yeah.
you know, I don't know, like, you know, when there was racial tensions and riots going on in LA, they could do something like that, where it's more of or the civil rights movement in the 60s. With the sort of the 50s with the lynchings and
Yeah,
stuff like that.
I was going to
you know,
say, how long
they
do you
could
reckon
bring it
it'd-
forward a little bit? You
How
know?
long do you reckon it'd take for an urban legend to grow like that? I felt like the Civil War was a good enough, like, giving it 100 years or so.
Yeah, I suppose to give it a bit longer. But now, I mean, like, to be fair, like, you know, the 50s is a very, very long time ago.
God,
the
yeah,
1950s.
you got a good point there.
Yeah. I always forget that it's like 2019.
Yeah, I know.
Future is now. Jesus. But yeah, so no,
I'm eagerly looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I have high expectations.
Yeah.
Probably they won't be met because I'm just a cynic with recent releases.
I wonder
But
if they'll get Philip Glass back to do the score, because that's another thing.
Philip
I want
Glass's
to talk
score was
about.
brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah, that's another thing that, again, is just way better than it needs to be in terms of the production of the score. And it's like,
Yeah.
it's a really kind of ethereal piano, organ and voice kind of soundtrack, which isn't innately, you know, horror. It's not like necessarily, if you hear it separately from the movie, it's not necessarily a horror soundtrack. I mean, some of it is quite sharp and quite kind of syncopated and, like, you know.
I think the music, Philip Glass's like choral music all the way through, I think helped my opinion of the projects having some kind of admiration and adoration of Candyman, and them being in his kind of congregation.
Yeah,
he being the figurehead of this.
Made it a religious thing.
Yeah, again, like the way that she's deified at the end and made into like a bit of an angel, Helen, after saving the kid, and everyone attending the funeral, and I don't know, I just felt like that was Candyman being their figurehead.
Yeah.
And like being, like deified in the same way. Like an urban legend being made about them is just the most recent way we can do it.
Yeah.
But the choral music, I felt, just meant that we're constantly in the congregation. We're constantly in church of Candyman.
I never thought of it like that. That's really cool.
That's what I felt like, anyway.
I think it just kind of, I think I was, that's a really good point, actually. Like, I never thought of it in those terms. But I think for me, I guess it kind of just represented that, you know, this person was once a real, you know, a kind of a quite an upper class gentleman, and you know, probably a very kind, you know, sort of man who never did anything wrong, and like never did anything like
the only thing he did
innately
wrong
evil.
was love a white woman.
Yeah, exactly. You know, which isn't anything wrong. So, you know, so it's like this kind of sympathy. It gave him a lot of sympathy. I felt like it was
He's
also,
very
you know,
sympathetic,
sympathetic
very
monster.
Monster, yeah.
Yeah, much like Frankenstein. You know, all those kind of monsters. They didn't ask for this shit. You know, it was
Yeah,
like
exactly.
you know,
Yeah,
forced into this kind of, you know, supernatural being. You know, of the entity. And so yeah, I think it always just gave. Yeah, you know, between scenes when you have those just lovely piano pieces and stuff, and it's just very romantic. And obviously, her looking at all these newspaper stories through like the microfiche thing, you know, she's like going through the microfilm.
Yeah, exactly.
And looking through, and you know, this is a beautiful piano, and it's just like this is something
an
that is
admirer
really,
would do.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of really romanticized,
Yeah.
you know, kind of thing, and it's just brilliant. It works so well, and that that opening shot of the, you know, when you're above the Chicago cityscape, and it's just sort of scrolling to the left, and you're just like, what is this movie? You know, if you didn't have the Candyman banner and you didn't know anything about it, I just wouldn't know what type of movie this was going to be, you know, because it's just that urban landscape where,
it's very urban,
and then you get that wall of bees just coming up, and there's Tony Todd's voice, you know, doing the intro. I love it. I think it's amazing. Yeah. But yeah, and again, the best movies are kind of. I mean, it is a horror movie, no doubt, but it takes elements from, you know, different types of movies, and it subverts genres, and I just think it's a brilliant movie. Yeah,
no, I agree.
Any closing statements you want to make?
Thank you very much for introducing me to it, because I'm pretty sure without your recommendation, I probably wouldn't have made the effort.
No.
Unless maybe, like, when I saw the new It, I went back and watched the original miniseries to see where it came from and the first interpretation of it. So I imagine that when Jordan Peele does bring out Candyman, I probably would have gone back to see it, to see Bernard Rose's version. Just to see the differences, and again, just to
that would have been really interesting, actually, that way around, actually, if you'd seen if you'd actually watched the remake first, and then but we don't know what the remake's going to be yet, so I suppose,
true, but I think that I've watched it the right way around. I feel like I'm going to appreciate the nuances that Jordan Peele will give to it, so I'll see where he's gone differently. But yeah, I just want to say thank you very much for showing it to me. So
pleasure.
I'm looking forward to seeing the next recommendation you have for me, really.
My pleasure. Yeah, so we started off talking about Candyman. We moved on to, I think there was a South Park reference in there.
There was. We ended up with Trump administration and
social politics.
Yeah, the last
Katie
we talked about
Hopkins
that
was mentioned.
Katie Hopkins was, unfortunately,
which we really should never. We should not say her name 5 times. She appears behind you being racist, being a rancid bigot.
Oh god, I'm gonna have nightmares about her now. Thank you. And that's all the time we have for today, so say goodbye, Matt.
Goodbye, Matt.
And it's goodbye from me, Mike, and we'll talk to you again next time.